we can see that it's already built and compiling, and here we've stopped at our breakpoint, our first breakpoint at the page load event handler. And so we'll step into this now, or step through it. No, it's not a post back, and so we're going to turn these controls off, it looks like, and then okay, here's entities count. This is a method or a function, you could call it, and we'll step into this thing. I hit F11, and what's going on here? We're getting the, oh, I remember now, yeah, of course. This is a stored procedure. You'll see, stored procedure in the database, and so I wrote that, and we'll want to go and check that out since we're looking at this now. So we'll go over to the Management Studio. These are stored procedures. Now, most of these stored procedures you'll see are prefixed with ASP.NET. These are stored procedures I was talking about earlier. I didn't write these. I didn't have to. Microsoft did that for me, and all I had to do was just run the command line command, and those were all generated for me. And tables were also built into this database to handle roles-based authorization, authentication, that sort of thing. Also, I have an online web tool now for managing user accounts and that sort of thing. Okay, these are the stored procedures here that I wrote, and this is one here. It's that we were talking about, get these entities. What we're going to do is we're going to retrieve two things from these two different data tables, referred to as parameters, and so that's what we're doing here. We're going to grab those, and so let's do that. So I'll hit F10, and we'll go line by line here. And you'll see we're defining parameters. Now we're opening a connection to the database. And now we've executed the scalar command, and we're bringing back those two values. Okay, and we're going to now close the connection finally. We use finally block, make sure that the connections are closed. And, oh yeah, now this is that global ASAX. Again, this is something that I wouldn't have thought of using if I was putting this thing together from scratch. But thanks to Microsoft, it's here for me, and this is then handling the site map, you'll see, for the menu across the top. And so we're using new technology. It was new technology then. And so let's go ahead and see what we have now. This is the website, and it's working here on local IIS, and so this is coming off the local host here on my PC, my machine here. I'd like to show you what happens when we click on this button here. Those two values there, the number of DXCC entities worked, 282 here and 275. These are the two values that we pulled out of the database. When the page loads, it does that every time. It'll make that calculation, that stored procedure. It'll return those two values. I'd like to show you what happens behind the scenes when we punch that button. As you'll remember, we get a list of countries, just one of each, if I've worked them, and if the country's been confirmed with a QSL card. And so here we are now in the code behind, and we've stopped at a breakpoint on the page load event handler, and we skate by that first conditional. Okay, now we're at the button click event handler. Let's see, I'm just stepping F10 into this code here, and data table. Okay, so we're defining a data table. Oh, and there's a function call, so let's step into that and see where that takes us. Okay, here's the function right here. And so we're going to go ahead and step through this thing. Data table, new data table. Okay, connection string, all right. And stored procedure, here's another stored procedure. All right, so let's make our connection and do the data reader thing, and we'll fill up a table here. Now we've created a memory resident table, and so that's interesting, isn't it? And then finally, don't forget to close the connection, because we don't want to be hogging up resources out there. And we'll return then this data table. Oh yeah, let's look at that thing. I'm just too curious. Here's the data table visualizer. IntelliSense. Boy, isn't this beautiful? There it is. Here's the countries. This is all memory resident now. What we did was we used a data reader and grabbed it. So I'm going to close this. And so there we are. There's the data table. Now let's get another data table here. Not countries. And so that's an interesting word. Let's step F11 into that. Here's another data table. And this is calling on the SQL database out there. So we're making a connection. Here's another stored procedure that we'll have to go to the database to see exactly how we fashioned that. which is the right way to do things. Actually, we could have written the commands here just as easily, or actually maybe easier, but it's better to keep them on the database. Anyway, then here's this other data table, another memory resident data table, and I'd like to take a look at that. Let's click on a little eyeglass here and visualize that thing there. Okay, so these are countries now that I have worked, but I don't have any confirmation for them yet. Okay, so we have those two. Now, what's next? Data table. Here's the new data table. And so what are we going to do with this thing? Okay, we're going to define a bunch of columns. That's what we're doing. And then what we'll do is, after we've defined these columns and created this database here, or this data table, we're going to go, through all of these doggone records. And we're going to do conditionals, no doubt, yeah. Okay, and so it did all its work, row by row by row. And so now we have a data source here, and we have another data source here, and we're going to data bind now these controls on the code in front. And so we'll do that, and we'll turn them on, turn that one off, and then we're going to go back to the global ASAX for the menu. Here, then there's the list. And so that's how that was done, all behind the scenes. And this is all done in a blink of an eye out there on the web server and utilizing the database server. But I wanted to give you a chance to see the code that's behind the scenes here, just because it is quite involved, involving several of these database tables. But this is just the beginning. We built from here. We learned some things on this website, and then we extended them to these other websites that actually had use for other people. Here, this was just academic for me. All right then. Okay.